G'day guys, welcome to episode 4 of the big fights that I have attended. So in the last episode you would have seen that we covered the Canelo Mayweather fight, we covered Marquez Pacquiao 4 and also Mayweather Guerrero that was in 2013 as well. So hope you enjoyed those episodes. In this one we're going to be featuring 3 fights involving Floyd Mayweather Jr., 2 fights with Marcos Maidana, both great classic fights, of course, and then the biggest one of all, which was Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. And now that's a little bit of an interesting story because I'll get to it in a minute, but I was sort of there. Well, we were there obviously for the fight, but we didn't actually make it in. I'll get onto that in a second. Let's get on to the first one, which is Mayweather Maidana 1. Now, this was in May 2014. So I remember this fight probably more than any of the other fights was the real tension that was in the crowd. I did mention, I think, in the last episode with Mayweather and Pacquiao and Marquez. This was a little bit different in that it also almost reminded me of like a, what it'd be like going to a big soccer game. You had the Argentinians, and then you had the money team, and the two tribes just did not get along. The Maidana crew was more like, as I said, like that soccer crew. They're really passionate and really behind their guy. With the Mayweather team or the money team, it was the boys, and they sort of rule the roost. All the rest of it, it's hard to explain, but it was very tense. I remember at the weigh-in there were actually some almost tussles that I've seen between rival camps. Look, it does seem to tend to happen sometimes when you put two athletes that are so beloved to their individual supporter bases, I suppose. As I said, especially when you get the soccer element involved as well, which is the way the Argentinians approached it. They were very vocal, which was surprising to me as well, because there wasn't a lot of them, but they were very, very vocal. Certainly wasn't like a Mexican crowd as far as numbers goes, but as far as that intensity goes, it was certainly there. And things weren't made any easier when Mayweather had issues with Maidana's gloves. You can see there he's wearing the Everlast gloves. The original gloves he had were also Everlast, but they were the horsehair gloves. And apparently Mayweather's team, they had an issue, and there was right up until, I think even the morning of the fight, there was threats that they wouldn't go ahead with the fight, which I don't think was ever going to happen. I mean, it tends to happen a lot with these things. It's always about gloves or wraps or something that gets people excited, or the teams. It gives them a reason to, I suppose, just to spark up a little bit more interest. But Maidana wore these gloves. He fought a very, very, very good fight, I will say. I know on the night there was a lot of people that maybe said that he got the decision. I didn't see it that way. I still think Mayweather got the decision. But you can see there he was definitely hit. He was hurt. He was cut. Maidana took it right up to him and, really earned his money that night. So I remember probably the one thing I remember most about this fight is actually at the end of the fight. Now, I'm not sure any of you guys out there have been to the MGM. When you come out there, it's pretty much a funnel type of thing. You come out of the arena and you're into pretty much the food court and into the shopping centre and everything else. It's not a great way to take a crowd out of the venue, which is why a lot of these big fights are now being shifted across the road to the T-Mobile Arena. But in this one, I remember just exiting the arena, and there was a sound. It did sound like a gunshot. Apparently it wasn't, but it did sound that way. And I was right in the midst of it. People obviously panicked. People just went scattering everywhere. Luckily, I was sort of along the wall coming out, and so everyone sort of spread. There were people falling over and everything, panicking obviously, and I got pinned against the wall, which is probably, as I said, probably the best place to be, because there were people getting trampled, and in those situations you don't really know how people are going to react. So it was actually quite scary. The Maidana fans weren't happy at all either. There was quite a bit of damage leading back into the casino area as well, which is not good. You don't really like to see that, but it was actually quite scary, especially, as I said, with the perceived gunshot that went off. But fortunately, there was no real injuries, I think, from memory. But as I said, very, very scary. And then obviously when Maidana's crew started to act up a little bit because their man lost, then that wasn't great either. But yeah, look, it was a really good fight. Of course, they fought the rematch, which we'll cover in a second here. But I remember it was a really entertaining fight. A lot of Floyd's fights have been very one-sided. Not the most exciting fights at all. But in this one, I remember he actually engaged a fair bit. I'm not sure whether this was the one where he said that Maidana actually bit him. I think there's a replay that shows that he actually bit his hand. I'm not sure if it was this one or the next one. But look, a really entertaining fight, really great vibe around the place all week, apart from obviously, as I said, the tension that was between the two camps. And I remember even after the fight, normally you'd sort of go and hang out in the casino and around the place. I remember just going to get something to eat, and even then it was a little bit tense. And I remember just sort of going back to the hotel and sort of calling it a night, because the whole casino and the strip outside really took on a little bit of a different turn after that. So... but yeah, again, a great fight. And you can see there, Floyd Mayweather got the decision, and well deserved. And I'm not sure why they put that on the YouTube thing there, why I thought he won. Of course he won. So anyway, so let's get on to Marcos Maidana, Floyd Mayweather 2. Now, this took place in September of the same year. As you probably all know, that Floyd would fight in May and September on the two Mexican holidays. It was always the biggest weekends of the year in Vegas, and he capitalised on that, and obviously brought a lot more people to Vegas. But I actually went to this fight with my wife. A lot better lead up to it. There's an incident afterwards that I'll get to in a second, but the lead up in the week of the fight was actually a lot tamer than the first. As I said in the last one, it was very tense. This one, it was the normal type of fight crowd. Of course, the Argentinians were still there, and obviously the money team, but it wasn't as tense as the first one. Maidana, I'm not sure whether he didn't turn up in the same frame of mind, maybe physically or mentally, in the first one, but Floyd Mayweather, that's why he's the great champion. He turned up and made the adjustments, and I thought it was actually a pretty one-sided fight in the end. Maidana, look, he still had his moments, make no mistake about that. He's tough, he's rugged. But Floyd, as I said, the great fighter that he is, I think the main thing in this one, you can see there he copped a really good right hand that actually knocked his tooth out. That was probably the only real bit of success that Marcos Maidana had. But I found the real difference in this one. Instead of sort of lying on the ropes a lot and allowing Maidana to tee off, even though he's doing it there, of course, he would tie him up and spin him off the ropes and then counter, and didn't really lay on the ropes as much as he did in the first fight, which I think made it a little bit easier for him there. And you can see him countering Marcos Maidana as he came off the ropes. But the unfortunate thing that happened after this, I was in there, and my wife and I had great seats. And when I say great seats, they weren't necessarily down the front and like that, but we were right on the tunnel where they walk out, so right on the fence. So the fighters actually came out right below us. So we actually yelled out to Floyd, and he turned around and gave us a wave on the way back to the change room. So that was great. They were really close, and as I said, we weren't down the front or anything like that, but just where we were positioned right on the aisle beside the tunnel, it was great. So after the fight, now everyone was exiting as I normally do. I just hung around. My wife and I just sort of, you people watch and let everyone stream out. I hate the crowds, especially after what happened in the first fight. But we hung around, and the stadium was practically empty. And then all of a sudden, you could hear a lot of commotion, and then everyone started rushing back into the stadium, which was really, really scary, because it was like a trail of ants just piling through. So from 1 second being empty, all of a sudden there were thousands of people just flocking back in there, and reportedly there'd been another gunshot. Was founded to not be true, but as what happened in the first one, people did panic. The one thing that I will say with this one, as we walked out this time, that we actually saw fights, supporters of each, actually punching on, and there was a lot of damage this time. I remember walking back to the casino, and there were broken windows, and a lot of businesses are actually shut because of the damage that was being caused. And people, look, you know what it's like. People, they pile on. They see other people doing it, so it's just an all-in. And it was really not the side of boxing that you really want to see, to be honest. That much damage in the fighting and that going on. But luckily, look, there was no shooting again. I think what actually happened was there was just a big brawl, and people panicked, and as I said, as soon as one person panics, two, and then four, and then eight, and then 16, and then all of a sudden you've got everyone charging in. But it was very, very scary at the time to have a pretty much empty stadium. And then thousands of people just come pouring back in at 100 miles an hour. So, as I said, fortunately no one was hurt there. But definitely one of those experiences that you get when you're over at these big fights. But as I said, Mayweather did the job and thoroughly deserved his win. And unfortunately, we never saw Marcos Maidana after that. But I'm sure he's enjoying retirement. If you see him these days with the shape that he's in. Pretty much a round shape. He's enjoying his retirement, so good luck to him. The last fight we're going to cover in this one is the big one. This is Floyd Mayweather Jr. again, but this time against the Pac-Man, Manny Pacquiao. Now, as I said at the start, we actually were in Vegas for the fight, but we never actually got inside to see it. Now, the reason we're all over there, I was with Team Maloney, so Jason and Andrew, there was Brian Butler, there was about a dozen of us that went over for a training camp. And if you talk to Jade Mitchell and those types of guys, they were all there as well. It really was a defining trip for those guys. The Maloneys are over there sparring with Vasil Lomachenko, and Jade was sparring with Miguel Cotto, and just the experience they got. But anyway, we'd spent the 2 weeks, I think it was, in LA at Garcia's gym and Wildcard, and we went to Vegas for this fight just for a few days of R&R after a pretty tough camp for the guys. So we get there, we thought we might get tickets, but of course this was the hottest ticket in town, and we couldn't get tickets. We spent all day trying to get it, and then it was trying to find somewhere to actually watch it because the bars just weren't showing it. There was massive cover charges on. We had nowhere to watch it. We thought a couple of gyms we'd done a little bit at in Vegas might be able to help us out with home parties and all the rest of it, or house parties, and no one could help us. So we actually got to the point where it was an hour before the card starting, and we had no choice. We had to pay $200 American, so about $300, to go into the Excalibur. They had a little, like a function room. They had it on the big screen, and we could sit in there and watch it with everyone else. So $200 American. But all that aside, it was the absolute buzz of the week. Even though we didn't get into the fight, we were lucky enough to go. There was the weigh-in. There's obviously just the amount of people that were there in the foyers, in the bars and restaurants. It was an unbelievable atmosphere. Obviously the biggest I'd seen. I think I said in the previous episode that Mayweather Canelo was massive, but as you can imagine, this fight was just huge. Every man and his dog was there, and it was just a great atmosphere. So many boxing people there, and just getting around. And even though we didn't get to go to the fight, I had to include it because the whole experience was just awesome. We stayed across the road at the Excalibur. Again, wasn't overly cheap to stay there, but we all had a ripper time. We, as I said, there was about 12 of us that were there, and Uncle Ronnie Picken was there, and it was just a really, really good trip, and we had a few good nights at restaurants and bars, and really, as a really good opportunity to wind down. And since then, obviously the Maloney has gone on to massive things, and Jade really used that as a springboard for what he's done as well. So hopefully, it did help them in some way. But it was a trip that we never forgot, because that 2.5, 3 weeks, whatever it was just something that you would never have dreamed of how successful it was. And to finish it off with this event, we all got plenty of merchandise and souvenirs and all that sort of stuff. But as far as getting in to see the fight itself, couldn't get there, unfortunately, especially when they're charging about $10,000 a seat. So anyway, so that was Mayweather Pacquiao. Obviously Mayweather got the decision, and look, it ended up being a pretty lackluster fight. One thing I do remember though is the excitement of fight day. The strip was absolutely buzzing. It was packed. Obviously nice and hot in May. It was just a great atmosphere, and as I said, just a really, really, really good trip. One side note to that whole thing I will say is that I was a designated driver on the whole 2.5, 3 week trip, whatever it was. I went through 3 vans while I was there. A couple of them were my own fault. The other one wasn't. But yeah, 3 different vans. So after that, I was kicked off the drivers list after that, and I don't think the company that we went through was very happy that I'd cost them 3 vans. It would have cost them a hell of a lot in panel beating and repairs and paint and everything else. So yeah, but it was an unbelievable trip, the Dream Chasers trip. We did actually do it that following year with, and that's coming up in another episode as well. Shannon O'Connell and Susie Ramadan. We took over to New York and Shannon fought there, but I'm going to include that. And then we also done another one with the twins a couple of years after this one. So that's it. That was all 3 fights. So we had Mayweather Maidana 1, Mayweather Maidana 2, and Mayweather Pacquiao. All great experiences. Hope you enjoyed it. That's episode 4. Keep a lookout for episode 5. Now, I haven't actually got it written down in front of me, but from memory, it will be the Mayweather-Andre Berto fight. I'm going to throw in Shannon O'Connell and Sandy Zagoras. Now, that was the fight that went to in Canada. That was a training camp I took the girls to, as I just said. We went to the Berto Mayweather fight the day after Shannon fought. But I've got to include that because there's some great stories involved in that. And then in 2016... it would be the Canelo Alvarez and Amir Khan fight that took place in May 2016. So keep a lookout for those coming soon. Hope you're enjoying the episodes, and I'll catch you then.